Welcome to your deep dive. Today we're tackling something that's definitely got people talking hidden sugar. You actually sent in this article from Healthline, 17 foods and drinks that are surprisingly high in sugar. Looks like you're ready to, sweeten your knowledge a bit. And let's be real, sugar can be a little bit of a bit of a trickster, right?
Oh, absolutely. It has a way of sneaking into places you'd never expect, even when you think you're making healthy choices.
This Healthline article, it really calls out some of those unexpected culprits. Ketchup, BBQ sauce, condiments, who knew?
Right. You think savory, not sugar rush. But it's true. They can be surprisingly high in sugar. And it doesn't stop there. Even things we see as healthy, like low-fat yogurt or grabbing a granola bar for breakfast, those can be loaded with added sugar too.
It's like sugar's playing hide and seek on those grocery store shelves. And one thing the article really pointed out was flavored coffees. Some of them have as much sugar as a can of soda. It's kind of crazy when you think about it.
It's true. Those fancy coffee drinks,
Yeah.
they can be like dessert in disguise.
Mhm.
And, it's not just the amount of sugar, but also the type of sugar added to these foods that's important to pay attention to.
Okay, so tell me more about that. What's the difference?
Well, a lot of processed foods, even some of the ones we've mentioned, use high fructose corn syrup. You've probably seen it on labels, HFCS. And while our bodies process all sugars, there's been research linking HFCS to some specific health concerns.
So it's not as easy as saying sugar is sugar. There's more to it than that. So that's why it's important to be in the know about these hidden sources of sugar so we can make smarter choices.
You got it. Knowledge is power. When you know what to look for, you can make decisions that really match up with your health goals. Like instead of grabbing that pre-made soup, which, by the way, the article mentions, can also be a sneaky source of sugar, you might be inspired to, whip something up at home.
That's a really good point. When you cook from scratch, you have control over what goes in, so you can skip those added sugars entirely. But realistically, not everyone has the time to cook every single meal.
Mm-hmm.
So what about those times when you're reaching for packaged foods?
That's when label reading becomes crucial. And I don't just mean skimming over that total sugar content. You've got to dig a little deeper.
So how do we become expert label detectives? What should we be on the lookout for?
Well, for starters, don't just get stuck on that big sugars number, the grams. Look closer at that ingredient list.
Okay, so we're really scrutinizing that list. What are some red flags?
Keep an eye out for those words ending in like oulose, sucrose, dextrose, maltose. They sound kind of scientific,
I do.
but really they're just fancy names for sugar.
Uh-huh. Sneaky synonyms.
Exactly. And here's a little tip. Remember, ingredients are listed by weight from most to least. So if you're seeing high fructose corn syrup hanging out near the top, well, that product's got a bit of a sweet tooth.
Okay, so we've got our detective hats on in the grocery aisles. But what about those times when we're out and about, grabbing a flavored yogurt on the go? Seemed innocent enough before this.
You're right. Those everyday choices, they can really sneak up on you. That's where this article, it offers some really practical swaps. Like think about that yogurt aisle. Plain yogurt with some fresh berries. It actually has less sugar than most of those flavored low-fat versions. It's all about making those little switches.
That's a good point. Sometimes the simpler option is actually the lower sugar one. Makes you think twice.
Totally.
I'm thinking about breakfast now.
Yeah.
The article mentioned granola. Granola. I always thought that was, a healthy choice. But they're saying it could be surprisingly high in sugar.
It's true. And, it's those added sugars. Plain oats, those are fantastic. Whole grains, fiber, they've got it all. But a lot of granola brands, they mix in a bunch of honey, sugar, different sweeteners,
Yes.
which basically turns your breakfast into, dessert.
So that classic healthy breakfast yogurt granola fruit could actually be a sugar minefield.
It's something to be mindful of for sure. But hey, here's the good news. With a little awareness, you can make it work. Just look for those granolas with less added sugar and, watch your portion sizes. Or try topping your yogurt with nuts and seeds instead. There are options.
Love those tips. It seems like every time you think you've got a handle on healthy eating, there's a new layer to uncover. Speaking of uncovering layers, chocolate milk. The article called that out too. Childhood staple.
I know, right? I mean, milk itself, it's great. Calcium, protein, all that good stuff. It's the added sugar in chocolate milk that can be a problem. 1 cup can have almost as much sugar as, get this, as a soda.
No way, really. That much. So much for the healthy after-school snack.
Yeah.
And it's not just kids, right? I know plenty of adults who still love their chocolate milk.
Oh, for sure. And look, this isn't about, demonizing any one food. It's about awareness. Once you're aware of how much sugar is hiding in plain sight, you can start to make different choices that work for you. Maybe that's swapping out chocolate milk for plain milk with a little sprinkle of cocoa powder or sticking with water most of the time.
This all makes sense, but I have to admit it can feel a little overwhelming. Like, is sugar lurking everywhere? Are we doomed to a life of bland food and like unsweetened everything? This all makes sense, but I have to admit it can feel a little overwhelming. Like, is sugar lurking everywhere? Are we doomed to a life of bland food and like unsweetened everything?
Oh, absolutely not. It's all about, finding that balance. This deep dive isn't about cutting out sugar entirely. It's about arming you with the information to make, conscious choices. If you're craving that cookie, that slice of cake, go for it. Savor it.
That's a relief. I was starting to picture a life without chocolate, and honestly, no thanks.
Right. But here's something interesting the article mentioned. When we're constantly bombarding our taste buds with those super sweet foods, it can actually make those naturally sweet things like fruit taste less satisfying.
Kind of ironic,
Right. So by cutting back on the added sugar, our taste buds might actually start to rediscover those natural flavors. That's pretty cool. It is. And it just goes to show, another benefit of being mindful of our sugar intake. It helps us appreciate the deliciousness of those whole unprocessed foods. It's like hitting the reset button on your taste buds.
I love that analogy. This deep dive has been seriously eye-opening. I feel like we've learned so much about how to navigate this whole hidden sugar landscape. What's the biggest takeaway you hope listeners will walk away with today?
I think the most important thing is remembering that knowledge is power. By understanding how sugar hides in our food, by, getting those label reading skills down, we can make choices that really support our health and well-being. It's not about being perfect. It's about being aware.
So well said. And listeners, we want to hear from you. What's one small change you can make today to be just a little bit more mindful of your sugar intake? Let us know, because this conversation, it's far from over. Keep those questions coming and stay curious, friends.